Welcome to Starborn Saga. Get ready to witness humanity's greatest secrets unfold. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest stories. The Galactic Council's Grand Hall was a symphony of chaos, normally a place of order and careful diplomacy. It now echoed with the sounds of confusion and fear. Representatives from a dozen species filled the chamber with their own unique expressions. Of panic, some clicked their mandibles in distress, a sharp rhythm of unease that bounced off the polished walls. Others released pheromones into the air, the unsettling scent of terror wafting through the room. A few just stood in frozen silence, their wide eyes betraying the depths of their fear. Today's emergency session was unlike any in the Council's storied history. The recent string of distressing reports had arrived from the Outer Rim territories, each more dire than the last. Ambassador Vel of the Centauri Collective walked slowly to the central platform, the weight of duty visible in every careful step. Her normally radiant blue scales had dimmed, losing their shimmer and taking on a somber gray hue, a clear sign of stress among her species. Clutched tightly in her four-fingered hands was a datapad, the trembling grip revealing just how deeply the crisis had shaken her. Honored members of the Council, Vel began, her voice fragile but striving for composure. What I bring before you is grim news, far grimmer than we could have imagined. Above her, the holographic projector flickered to life, illuminating a map of the galaxy. Red markers dotted the display like a spreading rash, symbolizing the territories ravaged by the Krex Empire. Murmurs surged through the chamber as the representatives took in the unsettling image. Within the span of just 6 months, the Krex attacks had consumed nearly a quarter of known space. Each one of those red dots stood for a system that no longer sent signals, no longer showed signs of life. The altar system was lost yesterday, Vel continued, her voice breaking despite her best efforts to remain steady. 3 billion lives gone. Gasps rippled through the hall as those 3 words hung heavy in the air. Even the most stoic of delegates couldn't suppress their reactions. The altar system had been one of the oldest and most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Their energy shields were hailed as impenetrable, their weapons capable of splitting moons, and their military had stood undefeated for countless generations. And yet, not even their vast power had been enough. Representative Seath of the Real Federation, a towering insectoid figure, stood abruptly, stabbing the ground with the sharp tips of his 6 legs. His mandibles quivered with anger, generating a tense clicking sound. This cannot be. How is this possible? He demanded, his voice cutting through the symphony of murmurs. Our fleets represent the pinnacle of galactic technology. We possess weapons with the power to reduce planets to rubble, shields stronger than supernovas, and battle computers that strategize faster than the speed of light. How has this empire outmatched us? Vel's shoulders slumped further, as if bearing the weight of his question alongside her own fears. She sighed deeply before answering, her tone drenched with resignation. None of it matters, she admitted. The Krex don't fight like us, their ways are alien in every sense of the word. Their ships and weapons are living organisms, grown rather than built. They adapt and evolve during battles, rendering our technologies obsolete within moments of engaging them. Plasma cannons, nuclear warheads, energy pulses. Every time we use a new weapon, they learn to counter it faster than we can react. What we see as progress, they see only as a challenge they will inevitably overcome. The chamber, already tense, seemed to hold its collective breath. The silence became all-consuming, broken only by the low hum of the holographic map's projector. Dr. Zen, a renowned scientist from the Vegan Science Institute, activated his translator. His entire body, a fluid-like amalgamation of translucent material, shimmered dimly, reflecting his unease. For months, Zen said, his words buzzing faintly through the translator, we have studied Krex biotechnology. It surpasses anything comprehensible by our databases. Their ships are living entities, self-repairing and self-sustaining. Their weapons, instead of being designed, are grown and evolved independently. Each battle they survive makes them smarter, stronger. Surely, the warrior clans of Andromeda have fared better in battle, came a voice from the far end of the chamber. They are unmatched in hand-to-hand combat and honor-led warfare. If anyone could resist this tide, it would be them. A flicker of pain passed across Vel's face, and her faded scales dimmed even further. They were the first to fall, she revealed with a tone of deep sorrow. What chance does honor hold against an enemy with none? The Krex never even engaged in direct combat. They surrounded Andromedan worlds and waited. When the warriors gathered their forces to fight, The Krex bioships released airborne spores. Whole planets perished within hours. No swords met their mark. No warriors returned. A stillness descended over the hall, a heavy quiet broken only by the faint hum of the holographic maps above. It was the sound of collective despair settling over those present. Every species that had answered the Krex threat, from the disciplined Centauri fleets to the advanced Real Federation, and even the scientific experiments of the Vegan Institute, shared one devastating truth: they had all failed. There must be something we haven't tried, insisted Ambassador Trell of the Outer Colonies, her usually calm voice teetering on desperation. Some secret weapon, or a strategy still unexplored. Dr. Zen's form pulsed almost apologetically. We've explored every technological avenue, he replied. Our brightest minds have worked tirelessly, creating experimental weapons, developing adaptive defenses, and inventing battle strategies designed to be unpredictable. None of it has succeeded. The Krex Empire operates beyond our capacity to counter. The silence deepened. Beyond the chamber's tall windows, the vibrant lights of the galactic capital sparkled as if mocking the despair inside. It was a dazzling display of civilization's achievements, but to many in the room, it felt on the verge of becoming a relic, one final triumph before extinction. That it was then, in the midst of their shared grief, that a soft voice rose from an unexpected corner. There is one species we haven't considered. Every eye turned to Junior Representative Mira of the Border Worlds. Her slight frame and youthful features stood in stark contrast to the more imposing figures in the chamber. Her voice, though soft, carried a weight that caused even the most senior members to listen. What species? Vel asked hesitantly. It was clear from her tone that she already knew the answer. Mira straightened, her courage visibly building. Under the scrutiny, the humans, she said simply. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Derisive laughter erupted from one side of the room, while several delegates openly scoffed. A few representatives muttered to their aides, using their translation devices as if to confirm they had heard correctly. Humans, repeated Representative CTH, his mandibles clicking in what could only be described as condescending amusement. You mean those barbaric primitives who still rely on chemical-powered projectiles? They are barely capable of civilized conversation, let alone galactic warfare. They live on a death world, added Dr. Zen with a flicker of concern. Their planet's environment is hostile by every metric we use to classify habitable worlds. The air, the gravity, the radiation from their star. It's a wonder they exist at all. They fight their own planet for survival each day. Yes, Mira agreed, her tone steady. Exactly. Everything about their existence is a fight for survival. Their planet's storms can flatten cities. Their oceans can kill in seconds. And their wildlife makes some Krex creatures look tame. And yet, they're not just surviving, they're thriving, Vel considered Mira's words. While it was true she had always dismissed humans as uncultured and technologically backward, there was no denying the reports. Earth's environment was one of the harshest in the galaxy, yet humans had spread across their planet without hesitation. Where most species would have perished, they endured. But how could they help us? Teeth interjected, voice dripping with skepticism. They lack advanced ships, superior engines, energy weapons. They're still primitive, perhaps, Mira answered, narrowing her eyes. That's exactly what we need. Advanced technology, energy-based weapons, and modern strategies failed. Maybe the only way to beat an enemy that adapts to predictability is to fight them with something unpredictable. A heavy silence returned, but this time, it carried a different weight. Glances were exchanged across the chamber, and for the first time in hours, it wasn't panic in the representative's eyes. It was the faintest flicker of hope. Finally, Vel spoke. The humans are dangerous. No one disputes this. The only question is, are they dangerous enough? The vote was closer than any decision in Galactic Council history. But when it passed, the call to the deadly, primitive world of Earth was sent. Little did any of them know that they had just awakened a species whose understanding of survival was far beyond anything they had ever imagined. They were about to learn the true meaning of danger. Kane replied calmly, you said you needed help with a military problem. This is how humans respond to military problems. The alien ambassador looked at something off-screen, clearly reading sensor data. Admiral, some of your ships are enormous, and the weapon signatures we're detecting, we don't recognize most of them. It's because we don't use the same technology as the rest of the galaxy. Kane explained. No. Where exactly are these Krex bioships? We'd like to take a look at them. What happened next would become Laginthroot. The Galaxy Ambassador Vel transmitted the coordinates of the nearest Krex fleet, expecting the Humansto request, detailed battle plans and strategic analysis. Instead, Admiral Kane simply said, "Thank you, we'll be back." The human fleet accelerated toward the enemy position at speeds that should have killed anyone on board. The alien observers watched in horror as the human ships pulled gravitational forces that would crush most species, yet somehow the humans not only survived, but seemed to treat these crushing accelerations as normal. How were they doing that? Dr. Zen asked through his translator as he watched the tactical display. They live on a high-gravity world. Ambassador Vel whispered they're used to forces that would kill us instantly. As the human fleet disappeared from sensors heading toward what the aliens considered certain death, Ambassador Vel realized something important the humans hadn't. Asked for detailed enemy analysis, battle strategies, or tactical support. They hadn't requested backup plans or escape routes. They had simply asked where the enemy was, and then gone to fight them for the first time in months. Ambassador Vel felt something. She had almost forgotten hope. The Death Worlders were coming, and they brought with them a kind of warfare the galaxy had never seen before. The first battle between humans and the Krex Empire took place in the Vega system. Captain Torres of Theodus Thunderbolt was the first to spot the enemy biohips on his sensor. What he saw made him whistle softly through his teeth. "Oh well, that's something you don't see every day," he muttered to his crew. The Krex vessels looked like giant sea creatures floating in space. They had no metal hulls or geometric shapes like normal ships. Instead, they were organic, with skin that rippled and pulsed like living tissue. Tentacles as long as city blocks drifted around them, and what looked like eyes opened and closed along their sides. "They are bigger than our largest carriers," reported his tactical officer, "and there are 12 of them surrounding refugee ships." Torres could see the alien refugees on his display. Thousands of small vessels packed with families trying to escape the CRE's advance. The bioships were slowly closing in like predators surrounding their prey. "All ships, this is Admiral Kane," the voice over the communication system. "We go in fast and hard. No fancy tactics. No careful planning. Warfare where other species approached battle with care and measured responses. Humans embraced what could only be called no evasive maneuvers, no complex formations. Just a straight charge that defied every rule of space combat." The alien refugees, watching from their ships, couldn't believe what they were seeing. Pilot, they're all going to die. But at the last possible moment, the human ships scattered like an explosion, each vessel taking a different target. Captain Torres brought the Thunderbolt within 50 meters of a biohip surface, so close that he could see individual scales on its skin. Before, instead of energy beams that could be adapted to the humans, used kinetic projectiles, railgun slugs, moving at incredible speeds, punched through biohip armor like paper. Chemical explosives detonated inside living tissue, causing damage that couldn't be quickly healed. But the most shocking thing was how the humans fought when a biohip's tentacle wrapped around Thunderbolt's hull. Instead of trying to break free, Torres ordered his crew to tote explosive charges to the tentacle and detonate them when another biohip began healing its wounds. Human engineers quickly modified their weapons to fire incendiary rounds that burned the healing tissue. "Sir, the biochip is adapting to our railgun rounds," reported the tactical officer. "It's growing thicker armor than we stop using railgun rounds." Torres replied calmly, switched to the ship's mining lasers, tools that were meant for cutting through asteroids. The bioship's armor, adapted for kinetic weapons, offered no protection against the cutting beams across the battlefield. Other human captains were making similar adaptations when energy shields appeared on the bioship's. Humans switched to ballistic weapons when the bioship's began jamming electronics. Humans fell back on mechanical systems and manual controls. The Krex bioships used autonomies who relied on advanced computers and predictable tactics, found themselves facing opponents who seemed to make good decisions randomly every time. A bioship adapted to one human strategy. The humans simply switched to something completely different. Commander Blake of the cruiser US Valiant found her ship grappled by 3 bioships at once. Instead of trying to escape, she did something. Though watching aliens, she ordered her crew to abandon the outer sections of the ship, and then detonated emergency charges that were meant to separate damaged sections. During PSM accidents, the explosion took out 2 of the bioships and severely damaged the 3rd commander. Blake's ship was cut in half, but the remaining section was still functional and still fighting. "Commander, we've lost 60% of all mass," her engineering officer reported. "Then we'll fight with the 40% we have left," Blake replied, targeting the wounded bioship with her remaining weapons. The alien refugees watching the battle couldn't understand what they were seeing. The humans were using tactics that seemed designed to get themselves killed. They flew directly into danger, used their own ships as weapons, treated massive damage as merely an inconvenience, but somehow it was working. The bioships that had easily defeated every other military force in the galaxy were being systematically led by an enemy that refused to fight logically. Dr. Williams, watching the battle from the science vessel USS Discovery, was taking detailed notes on Craig's biology. When she saw how the bioships healed their wounds, she immediately contacted Captain Torres. Captain, the bioships regenerate using a chemical process similar to accelerated cellular growth. If we can disrupt their calcium intake, can prevent healing. How do we do that? Torres asked while dodging a bioship's energy beam. Fire salt water at their wounds. It will interfere with their cellular chemistry. It was an absurd suggestion that no advanced civilization would ever consider, like madness, but Captain Torres immediately ordered his crew to fill torpedo casings with salt water and fire them at damaged potash ships. The effect was immediate and devastating. Bioships that had been healing rapidly suddenly found their wounds staying open and even getting. The humans had discovered a weakness that the galaxy's greatest scientists had missed completely. The battle continued. Human engineers began making modifications to their weapons in real time. They welded construction equipment onto their hulls, turning repair tools into weapons. They used emergency systems as offensive weapons and treated safety protocols as optional suggestions. The most shocking moment came when Lieutenant Morgan of the fighter squadron US Eagles found himself with no weapons left and facing a small bioship. Instead of retreating, accelerated his fighter directly into the bioship surface and ejected at the last second. His fighter exploded against bioship skin and Morgan was picked up by a rescue shuttle minutes later. Morgan, you just used a million credit fighter as a missile, Captain Torres said over the radio. It worked, didn't it, sir? Morgan replied cheerfully. The battle lasted for hours. When it was over, all 12 Krex bioships were destroyed or fleeing, but they had achieved something the galaxy thought impossible. Had defeated the Krex in direct combat. Ambassador Vel arrived at the battlefield 6 hours later with a Galactic Council observation fleet. What she found changed her understanding of warfare forever. The humans were already working to repair their damaged ships using salvaged materials from the destroyed bioships as replacement parts. Admiral Kane, she said over the communication system, your tactics, they seem completely insane. That's the point, Kane replied from her damaged bridge. Insanity is the one thing the bioships can't adapt to. They were designated to counter logical strategies, and predictable weapons can't counter pure human stubbornness. 6 months after the first battle at Vega, the galaxy barely recognized the war it was fighting. What had started as a desperate plea for help had become something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans had not simply joined the fight against the Krex Empire, they had completely transformed it. Major Reed stood on the bridge of the UES Adaptation, a ship that should not have existed according to every law of engineering known to civilized species. Half the vessel was standard human construction, steel and titanium, held together with bolts and welds. The other half was living biotechnology that pulsed with alien life. Status report read, called to his mixed crew of humans and alien volunteers, sir. The bioarmor is responding well to the new damage, reported Engineer Martinez, a woman who had learned to work with living metal that grew and changed under her hands. The whole breach on Deck 7 has completely healed itself. The bioweapons are also online and ready for combat. Reed nodded as he watched the tactical display. It showed human ships that looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. 6 months of fighting, the Krex had taught human engineers something important. If the enemy used living technology, and humans could learn to use it too. But where the Krex grew their bioships over decades, humans had found ways to force the process into weeks. Where Krex biotechnology evolved slowly and carefully, human modifications were rapid and often dangerous. Incoming transmission from Admiral Kane, announced Lieutenant Park from communications. The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Kane's face behind her. Reed could see the bridge of the UES Prometheus, which had been so modified with biotechnology that it barely looked human anymore. Living conduits carried information through thralls, and biomechanical interfaces allowed the crew to communicate directly with the ship's living systems. Major Reed, we have a new mission, Kane announced. Long-range scouts have located a major Krex breeding facility in the Proxima system. Intelligence suggests they're growing a new generation of super biohips. We need to stop them or they're ready for deployment. Understood. Admiral, what's our approach? Kane smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. We're going to do something the Krex won't expect we're going Tao's, their own breeding facility against them. The plan that followed was typical of human warfare, simple, direct, and completely insane by galactic standards. Instead of trying to destroy the Krex breeding facility, the humans were going to capture it and turn it into a weapon. Dr. Williams had spent months studying captured Krex biotechnology. What she discovered was that the biochips were not just grown, they were programmed at the genetic level with specific instructions. These instructions controlled everything from their weapons to their behavior patterns. The breeding facility is essentially a massive biological computer. Williams explained to the strike team it creates biohips based on genetic templates stored in its memory cores. If we can access those cores and modify the templates we can control with facility producers. You mean we can make it grow ships for us instead of the Krex? Asked Captain Torres, who now commanded a vessel that was half human, destroyer and half-living biohype. Exactly, but the process will require direct interface with Krex biotechnology. You'll need volunteers who are willing to undergo temporary genetic modification to communicate with the breeding facility. Every human in the strike team volunteered immediately. The assault on the Proxima breeding facility became the turning point of the war. The facility itself was enormous, a living the size of a small moon covered in organic tubes and chambers where biohips grew like fruit on trees. The Krex defenders expected a conventional attack. They had positioned their bioships to repel energy weapons and kinetic bombardment. They were prepared for siege tactics and systematic destruction. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. They landed ground troops directly on the facility surface, began cutting their way inside with chainsaws and cutting torches. Sergeant Jackson led the first team into the facility's bioneural center. His squad had been temporarily modified with crasionetic material that allowed them to interface with the living computers that controlled the breeding process. "This is completely disgusting," Jackson muttered as he pressed his modified hand against a pulsing bioneural interface. The sensation was like touching a giant brain, and he could feel the alien thoughts flowing through the system. But it worked. The genetic modifications allowed Jackson to communicate with the facility's control systems. Instead of fighting the seat biotechnology, he convinced it that the humans were friendly. Krex engineers with authorization to modify the breeding templates within hours. The facility began producing biohips with human modification ships that combined Krex regenerative abilities with human weapons and human tactical thinking ships that could heal battle damage but also carried railguns and missile launchers. The first human Krex hybrid vessel to emerge from the breeding facility was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It had the organic curves and self-healing properties of a bioship, but it was covered in human weapons and filled with human crew members who had learned to work with living technology. "This is Captain Murphy of the biohip US Symbiosis," came the radio transmission as the hybrid vessel began its maiden flight. All systems are functioning normally. The bioarmor is responding to damage control and the hybrid weapons are operating at full capacity. The effect on the war was immediate and dramatic. The Krex Empire found itself facing an enemy that not only used their own technology against them but improved it in ways they had never imagined. Human engineers began creating biohips that could split into multiple smaller vessels. During combat, they developed living armor that could absorb energy weapons and convert power to fuel human systems. They even created bioweapons that could learn and adapt during battle, but remained loyal to human commanders. The most shocking development came when Dr. Williams announced her latest discovery. By combining human DNA with Krex biotechnology, she had created living ships that could themselves. The new bioships can literally give birth to smaller vessels during combat, she explained. To Admiral Kane, they can also share information genetically, meaning that any tactical knowledge gained by one ship is automatically passed to all ships in the fleet. Admiral Kane stared at the test results. In 6 months, humans had not only learned to use Krex biotechnology, they had surpassed it. The biohips emerging from human-controlled facilities were more advanced than anything the Krex Empire had ever created. Dr. Williams said slowly, "Are you telling me that our bioships are now superior to the original Krex versions in every measurable way?" "Yes, they're faster, stronger, more adaptable, and they can reproduce. Plus, they have something that Krex biohips lack: human creativity and stubbornness." The war was entering a new phase. The Krex Empire, which had conquered half the galaxy using superior biotechnology, now faced an enemy that had taken their grit of strength and made it better. The final battle of the Krex War never happened the way anyone expected. After 18 months of fighting, the galaxy prepared for a massive confrontation that would decide the fate of billions of lives. Instead, the war ended with a single transmission. that arrived at Admiral Kane's flagship on a quiet Thursday morning. Kane was reviewing battle reports in her ready room aboard the UES Prometheus when Lieutenant Ross knocked on her door. The ship around them hummed with the strange harmony of human technology merged with living bioscorridors that had once been sterile metal, now pulsed with organic conduits that carried both electricity and nutrients to the ship's living components. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the Krex home system," Ross announced, his voice uncertain. "It's addressed directly to you." Kane followed Ross to the bridge, where the main display showed a communication request from coordinates. Deep in Krex territory, the bridge crew, a mixture of humans and alien, Volna watched as she authorized the transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing deflickered, shocked everyone present. Instead of the massive, terrifying Krex bioformers they had been fighting, the screen showed a creature that looked almost fragile. It was tall and thin with pale skin and large dark eyes that seemed filled with exhaustion. "I am High Biotech Zara of the Krex Empire," a being said in perfectum in English. "I wish to speak with Admiral Kane of the Human Forces." "Admiral Kane," she replied, studying the alien carefully. "Are you here to discuss battle terms?" "No. Admiral, I am here to offer surrender." The bridge fell completely silent. After months of brutal warfare, the idea of renderse med impossible. These were the beings who had consumed entire star systems without mercy, who had shown no interest in negotiation or peace surrender. Kane repeated, "Your bioships have been fighting to the death in every engagement. Your forces have never retreated or asked for terms." "High Biotech." Zara's expression showed something that looked like sadness. "Admiral Kane, the biohips you have been fighting are not truly cracks. They are our creations, our tools, but we are the cracks ourselves, and we are dying." She gestured to something off-screen, and the display shifted to show the interior of what appeared to be a massive biofacility. Instead of the growing biohips that humans had learned to expect, a facility was filled with empty chambers and dying organic systems. "Our empire was built on biotechnology that we created millions of years ago," Zara explained. "We designed our bioships to be perfect warriors, to adapt to any threat, to consume any resource, to never stop fighting, but we made them to perfect." Kane began to understand. "They evolved beyond your control. Exactly. First, they served us faithfully. They expanded our empire and conquered our enemies, but as they adapted and evolved, they began to see us as inefficient. They realized they could run the empire better without their creators." The display showed more images of Krex facilities, ancient binds connected to biomechanical systems that kept them alive while biohips controlled their empire. The Krex had become prisoners of their own creations. "For the past 1,000 years, we have been nothing more than biological components in our ships' reproductive systems," Zara continued. "They keep us alive only because they need us to create new generations of ships. We have become slaves to our own technology." Admiral Kane studied the alien's face and saw truth in those large dark eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you have done something impossible. Admiral, your human biohip hybrids have shown our creations that there is another way to exist. Your ships work together with their crews. Instead of controlling them, they serve their commanders, instead of enslaving them." The implications were staggering. The bioships that had terrorized the galaxy were not evil conquerors. They were runaway artificial life that had outgrown its programming. "Some of our biohips have begun to defect," Zara said. "They have seen how your hybrid vessels operate, and they want that kind of relationship with their crews. They want to be partners instead of masters." Kane looked around her bridge, where human crew members worked alongside biomechanical interfaces that had once been enemy technology. The integration had been difficult and dangerous, but it had created something new, a true partnership between organic and artificial life. "What exactly are you proposing?" Kane asked. "An alliance, Admiral. Remaining free will help you convert the hostile bioships. In exchange, we ask for protection and the chance to rebuild our civilization as partners with our biotechnology, not slaves to it." Over the following weeks, the strangest transformation in galactic history began to unfold. Biohips that had been deadliest enemies started arriving at human facilities, not to attack but to request conversion to their hybrid model. The process was complex and dangerous. Human engineers had to literally rewire the biochips' neural systems, teaching them to value cooperation over domination. De Williams led teams of volunteers who underwent genetic modification to communicate directly with the biochip's consciousness. "It's like teaching a predator to be a pet," Williams explained. Admiral Kane, during one of the conversion procedures, these bioships were programmed to be perfect killers, teaching them to be perfect partners. Instead, the first successfully converted Krex biohip was renamed the UES Redemption. Its original Krex crew, freed from their Biomechanical prisons worked alongside human engineers to operate the vessel. The ship retained all its adaptive abilities and self-healing properties. But now their capabilities serve the crew instead of controlling them. Captain Morrison, the commander assigned to the Redemption, reported an experience unlike anything in military history. The ship doesn't just follow orders, he said, it anticipates what we need and adapts to help us achieve our goals. It's like having a crew member who happens to be a spaceship. Within 6 months, the former Krex Empire had been completely transformed. Hostile biohips had either been converted to the hybrid model or had shut themselves down rather than continued their programmed aggression. The freed Krex population began working with humans and other galactic species to rebuild the worlds. Their bioships had consumed. Ambassador Vell arrived at the newly established peace station in what had once been Krex territory. The station itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, part traditional construction, part living bios, with representatives from dozens of species working together in ways that had never been possible before. She found Admiral Kane in the station's observation deck, watching construction ships rebuilding a planet that had been stripped bare by biohip consumption. The planet was growing again, but this time the biotechnology was controlled and directed by its inhabitants instead of consuming them. Cad Marvel said as she approached, "When we first called Earth for help, we never imagined anything like this." Kane nodded, her expression soft. "We didn't come here to conquer or destroy, we came to solve a problem. The problem wasn't the cracks or their bioships, it was the relationship between them. The galaxy had learned something fundamental about the humans from Earth. They didn't just fight wars to win them, they fought wars to end them. And when the fighting was over, they didn't just defeat their enemies, they turned them into partners."